Hi, and welcome to the Modern Persian Food Podcast. We are food bloggers,
Bita Arabian,
and Bita Nazim Kelly, and we're here to share with you the rich flavors and fresh ingredients of Persian cooking and how to incorporate them into today's modern lifestyles.
We're excited to introduce you to the flavors, tastes, and techniques we use, and also our own cultural stories and perspectives growing up in the U.S. in a Persian family. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are on episode number 47, a cultural spotlight. Today, we will be covering Iranian Jewish food. I'm here with the lovely Bita June. Hi, Bita.
Hi there.
Today, we're very grateful to have a special guest, Tannaz Sassooni from LA. Hi, Tannaz.
Hi, it's so great to be here with you guys.
So good to have you. Tannaz works in animation technology by day with a passion in writing about Iranian Jewish food, as well as teaching, content creation. I would love to hear more about your passion project, how you got into it. So that's what we're doing today.
Thank you so much, Tannaz June. We're super excited to have you on the show. Our cultural spotlights are when we take a specific region or a type of Persian or Iranian cooking and share that with our listeners. And with Rosh Hashanah coming up, we thought it would be a great opportunity to learn more about Iranian Jewish foods in general, and also what are specific foods that are eaten on Rosh Hashanah and other holidays and events. So tell us, what are some of the things about Iranian Jewish food that for someone who isn't familiar with it, what are some things that you can share about that with us?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that I've gone about this is that, there isn't a lot of, especially in the West, there isn't a lot of attention paid to Jewish food that's outside of like Eastern European pastrami and gefilte fish and matzo ball soup and all of that stuff. And I know, just having grown up in a home where, my entire family is Jewish, we're from Iran. My mom cooked dinner pretty much every night when we were growing up, that there is a rich kind of cuisine culture, Iranian Jewish cuisine, that no one has really written down. So what I started doing many, many years ago was sitting down with women, usually moms and grandmas from different cities in Iran, and asking them, like, what are the recipes that you made for your family? What did you make for holidays? What was your Friday night meal, etc.? And what I came to find is that there is a very tightly regional Iranian Jewish cuisine. I mean, there's not just one, right? There's like Isfahani Jews make certain dishes, Kashi Jews, like my family is from Kashan, so Kashi Jews make certain dishes, Mashhadi Jews, and so on and so forth. And how I break it down is there are certain dishes that, of course, are holiday specific and are often things that Iranians at large also make, but the function becomes Jewish in that, for example, like Toot, the little marzipan that's shaped in the shape of a mulberry, is a classic Iranian sweet, but like we use it as a Passover sweet as well because it doesn't have wheat flour or leavening or anything like that. So that's one example. And then so there's those. There are dishes that are specific to holidays. The biggest example there is the classic Iranian Jewish Friday night meal is Chelo Abgoosht Ghondi, which is like a chicken broth based soup with Ghondi, which are these somewhere between like a meatball and a dumpling. It's usually ground poultry with chickpea flour and spices. And it's really cozy and really comforting and really delicious. And it's something that classically is every Friday night, the meal in an Iranian Jewish home. But like outside of Jewish households, oftentimes Iranians have never heard of it at all.
Right.
And then there's just dishes that aren't specific to any holiday, but for whatever reason have only evolved through the Jewish households in Iran. So like Ghondi is a word that comes up, I should mention, in a lot of different dishes. But like my mom makes a dish that both of my grandmothers used to make that is actually my favorite food in the whole world. It's called Gondi Kashi because, again, our family goes back to Kashan. And it's a rice dish where you actually like mix in ground meat into the rice and tons of fresh herbs. And then it also has beets and fava beans. And you cook it down as you would with like, it's not like a polo, like you don't do the parboil and then mix everything in. You put everything goes into the pot together with the water and it slowly cooks down. It's just such a good, fragrant, delicious dish. And sometimes you get like slices of beet on the tahdig that get caramelized and really sweet. So that's really the prize of the dish. But yeah, so that's the kinds of things that I'm talking about when I talk about Iranian Jewish food.
So that beet dish, does the whole dish kind of take like a reddish, pinkish hue to it?
The whole dish does not, but around where the beets are in the rice does take on a pinkish hue. So it's a mix of different like shades of pink and green. It's beautiful.
Cool.
Wow.
It's so good.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to taste it.
That sounds amazing. Do you guys like flip it out with like the tahdig, or do you just serve it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. So it sounds like there's a lot of like the familiar Persian flavors just kind of like eaten a little bit differently and for certain occasions.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
So like what about like Rosh Hashanah? What are like some typical foods that you guys would have at Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Rosh Hashanah, again, comparing it to like Ashkenazi, Eastern European traditions, like they often have apples and honey as like kind of the main thing that you associate with Rosh Hashanah. But in the Sephardic, Middle Eastern, Mizrahi, that world, the Rosh Hashanah table, there's a whole seder, there's a whole set of symbolic foods that we have every year together, which includes, I'm trying to remember, there are beets, in fact. There's beef tongue. The idea is that you're supposed to have meat from the head of the animal so that you go into the new year as the head and not the tail. What else? Black-eyed peas, pomegranate, fried zucchini. I mean, I think it's squash in general. Like, I think in some countries they have like pumpkin and things like that. But in our house and my aunt's houses, it's always fried zucchini. Of course, there is apples and honey and a date. You eat khorma, and there's a few others. But yeah, we go through this order. We say a blessing over each one. We always have my family over, and like there are certain personal likes and dislikes. Like, I'm not a huge fan of beef tongue. We make some jokes about it, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's beloved in our family overall. The whole process is definitely enjoyable.
And then so like other holidays and events, are those kind of have similar type of foods or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, of course, like Passover has its own seder with its own set of symbolic foods. Shortly following Rosh Hashanah is Yom Kippur, right? So like you have Rosh Hashanah. These two, like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur together, are considered the high holy days of the Jewish calendar. They are really the moment of reflection, of looking back on the past year, of looking forward to the new year and seeing how you can come in and sort of take from the past year and let go of what you need to let go and come in and be your best self. So it is a big moment. And of course, Yom Kippur is a fast holiday. There are different things that are eaten on the eve of the fast. In our family, we try to have something pretty light so it doesn't dehydrate us, so not terribly flavorful. A lot of homes will have chodesh debeh, which is, a stew made with quince, as well as like pomegranate juice. So it's really seasonal and it's super sweet and sour. But I guess the thing that's the most interesting is breaking the fast, where we have 3 specific things that we always have. One is chai, like hot tea, as soon as you get home. And of course, I should mention, we're all fasting, we're all praying, but it's always the matriarch of the family while fasting who's cooking, not eating, but doing all the work to prepare. So we need to always shout out the moms. And in fact, I'll mention here that I was born on Yom Kippur, and my mom actually was fasting on the day that I was born. She was like that steadfast about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that means you're pretty holy.
I don't know. I try. We try.
No pressure.
Yeah. Auspicious beginnings, I guess.
And it makes your mama an extra rock star, too.
Absolutely. She's a saint through and through. She really carries all these traditions for our family. But yeah, so we have hot tea, and then we have a soft-boiled egg, and then we have falou sib, which is, again, a thing that I don't think most people outside of Iranian Jewish communities know about, although I have heard that in the city of Kerman, they have falou sib. But anyway, it's shredded apples with rose water and sugar over ice. So it's like kind of a beverage. It's kind of something that you eat with a spoon. But, you haven't eaten or drank in 24, 25 hours. So this thing that like gives you the boost of energy from the sugar, the fragrance from the rose water really kind of like wakes you up and rejuvenates you. And then it's just like cold and refreshing, and you're thirsty and your mouth is dry. It's really the perfect thing to kick everything off. So you get your caffeine, you get a little bit of protein from the egg, and you get your falou sib, and then we'll go to dinner from there.
I've never heard that called falou sib, but I've had it.
Oh, really?
Yes, my mother-in-law makes it for a different reason. And do you know the word rande?
Rande.
To grate.
Yeah, of course.
Growing up, she would make it when the kids weren't feeling well as a remedy.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
And exactly as you described. And the kids started calling it apple randy because we all grew up in the U.S. So that's what I know. I know apple randy.
I love that.
It must be homeopathic.
I've watched like Persian cooking shows on YouTubes and things like this. And it seems like in the West, dessert is thought of as an indulgence always. And in Iran, they're always like, no, the desserts are the homeopathic, like the healing foods. Like all of them seem to have some sort of a nourishing, healthful property. And it definitely seems like fava de sib is so functional in the moment that you're having it after a fast or when somebody's not feeling well. Yeah, it really is refreshing.
So you've covered on some traditional ways of having Jewish Iranian food. Since this is modern Persian food, do you have any tips or ways that you incorporate it in your daily fast-paced life? Any like tips and tricks? We call them beets cheats.
One specific tip, it's again not Jewish, but my favorite thing in the whole world is shabat golab. It's as simple as water, sugar, rose water over ice. And when I was a little kid, if I was crying, if, someone was mean to me, if I'd hurt myself, it was the first thing that my mom would give me. It is the most restorative, especially now. I feel like the whole country is in a heat wave. The whole continent, maybe the whole world is in a heat wave.
The whole world.
On these hot days, there's nothing better to just refresh you and rejuvenate you. So yeah, that's my tip. Shabat golab.
I love it. Thank you. Tannaz, tell us about what projects you're currently working on.
Yeah, so I'm always open to opportunities to share this culture just because it's kind of hidden away.
Yeah.
So in the coming weeks with the high holidays coming up, I am going to be doing a Zoom cooking class for the Nosher.
Oh, fun.
Around Chodesh Tebeh, in fact. So this stew of quince and pomegranate juice as a Yom Kippur meal. I am working on writing a piece about Chodesh Desib, an apple-based stew that my cousin actually made up this recipe. She came to the US in the 60s and they didn't have quince. And so she kind of came up with an alternative that's really delicious. Mm-hmm. And because it is sweet and because it has apples and it also has stone fruit in its base. So it's good for Rosh Hashanah in that it embodies that transition from summer into fall. So I'm writing a piece about that. And in general, my goal ultimately with all of this is to publish a cookbook of Iranian Jewish recipes, make sure that all of this beautiful work that these women have done and passed down for generations is written down and documented, because I know that I don't cook like my grandmother, even my mom did. So we have to preserve it and maintain it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How can people get a hold of you or find out more about you?
Instagram is the best starting point. My handle is just my name, Tannaz Sassooni. So yeah, find me there.
Okay, great. We'll link that into the show notes too, so people can find you and follow you and learn about your projects. And as we talked about before, we have a segment in the show called Ask the Beets, where we usually have questions that our listeners have submitted for us. But since we're here live with you right now, are there any questions that you'd like to ask us for Ask the Beets?
Yeah, I would love to hear about the regional specialties from wherever the two of you are from.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great question. My folks are from northern Iran. My dad is from a village in Tabriz. Both my parents is around Tabriz, Azerbaijan regions. Mm-hmm. And the foods of that region that I remember and that my family prepared, there are quite a few, but the ones that come to mind is just Abgoosht and DZ, and that's a favorite that my grandmother made, that my mother made, that I make, that we all love in the family. And the other one is kufte tabrizi, which is basically like a huge meatball. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it has something in the middle. And the last one is dolme, and my family makes it sort of like a sweet and sour version. Sort of labor intensive, using grape leaves fresh if you have them, and the whole process. And that is actually a goal of mine, is to get that recipe and learn how to do it, how to make real dolme and pass that down, and maybe teach our girls how to make it as well, because they're young adults now.
Yeah, it all sounds amazing.
Bita June.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, my parents are originally from Kermanshah. And so when I think of food in Kermanshah, it's absolutely delicious. But if I wanted to just call out a few things, I think this thing that's like really unique is Rogan Kermanshahi, which is basically Rogan Kermanshahi is like animal fat. really rich, and they use a ton of it in their cooking, and it really brings like a really beautiful flavor to the stews and even the rice. When they use that in the cooking, it's really rich and indulgent, and it's super delicious. So Rogan Kermanshah is just like, it's named after that area, and so it's super awesome. Traveling back to Iran, we've actually brought back some Rogan Kermanshah and used that like really sparingly in dishes. I would love to call out then also khorma malus, which is actually, if you use the Rogan Kermanshah, that's great, but it's basically eggs with dates. So like fried eggs with caramelized dates on it. And I just have really fond memories of my dad actually making that when we were younger and having that not only for breakfast, but like in the evening or something as like a very simple rustic dinner. So I think when I think about Kermanshah and I think about food, I mean, like the flavors are absolutely amazing, but those things kind of really stand out to me as like really from Kermanshah, and the khorma malus having like Kurdish background, Kurdi background. And so that's, I think if we're talking about where my parents are from regionally, that those are some of the favorites that I would want to call out.
Sounds amazing.
Wonderful. Tannaz June, thank you so much for joining us. Bita June, as always, it's been lovely.
It's been great. Thank you, ladies. Have a great day. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to the Modern Persian Food Podcast with Bita and Beata. Thanks for spending time with us. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider telling a friend or giving us a good rating. You can subscribe to our show for free on your favorite podcasting app or find us online at modernpersianfood.com or on Instagram for the recipes and information we talked about today. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and see you next time.